For centuries, we have been told that Lucifer was the first to fall, the first to turn against God, the first to be cast down. His name became a warning, his fate a lesson in the consequences of rebellion. But what if this was a deception? What if, before the morning star fell, something far more terrible had already happened? Some things are not merely punished, they are erased, not cast into darkness, not bound in chains, but removed from existence itself. No name, no trace, no memory. But absence is never perfect. Even the deepest void leaves behind a scar. Scattered throughout ancient texts, hidden in cryptic verses, there are whispers of something that should not be. A force that was not of heaven, nor of hell, nor of earth. Something so dangerous that it could not be exiled. It had to be unmade. Lucifer's name was cursed so that all would remember his fall. But this name was never meant to be spoken again. Yet still, it lingers. Subscribe now, because the truth has been buried for too long, and those who seek the light will always be under God's protection. The beginning, a being without a name. In the beginning, before rebellion had a name, before the war in heaven shattered the harmony of creation, there was only order. Every being moved within the will of its creator. Every force bound to divine purpose. The light was pure, unchallenged, unquestioned. There was no conflict, no defiance, only perfection. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. Colossians 1:16. But within this perfection something stirred, not with pride, not with malice, but with curiosity. Among the celestial host, there was one unlike the others. No scriptures recall its name, no records speak of its presence, yet shadows of its existence remain in the deepest echoes of forgotten texts. It was not the greatest of angels, nor the most radiant, but it was different. Where others saw divine law as unshakable truth, it saw limitations. And where others saw only light, it wondered if something else could exist beyond it. Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord, or what man shows him his counsel? Isaiah 40:13. It was not rebellion, not yet. It was not an open challenge to God's authority. It was simply a question. Could creation be altered? Could something be made outside the will of its creator? No angel had ever dared to ask. To question was to suggest imperfection, and yet, within the stillness of eternity, that thought took form. Somewhere, unseen by the divine host, it shaped something. Not from light nor from darkness, but from something in between. It was neither bound nor free, neither living nor dead. It had no breath of life, no divine spark. It was a creation not made in the image of God, but in the image of its maker, flawed, incomplete, unnatural. They did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling. Jude 1:6. The heavens did not tremble, the stars did not dim, the angels did not cry out in alarm, for no one knew what had been done. But in that moment, the fabric of creation was no longer whole. Something existed that was never meant to be. And though no voice had spoken, though no war had begun, the first fracture had already formed. The sin that could not be forgiven. Creation had been perfect. Every being, every force, every breath of existence moved within the will of its creator. Nothing could exist outside his design, for he was the source of all things. Nothing had ever been made apart from him, until now. The first sin was not pride, it was not rebellion, it was something far worse. Among the celestial host, one had not sought to rule, nor to rise above God, nor to claim dominion over heaven. It had not wished to be worshipped, it had wished to create, but creation was the domain of God alone. No angel had ever dared to think otherwise, for no angel had the power to shape existence. Yet this one did not ask. It did not seek permission. It simply acted. Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, "Why did you make me like this?" Romans 9:20. Hidden from the eyes of the divine host, unseen by any who dwelled in the light, something was made outside the will of its creator, but what was shaped in secrecy did not bear the mark of divine breath. It was not living, it was not dead, it had form but no soul, movement but no purpose. It was wrong. They did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling. Jude 1:6. The one who had made it did not understand what had gone wrong. It had sought to forge something new, something that had never existed before, but what had been created was incomplete, a hollow thing, a mockery of life, something that neither heaven nor the abyss could claim. It had no place in the divine order, no right to exist. It was a wound in reality itself, and the heavens recoiled. For the first time, something had been brought into existence that even God had not willed. It was not merely unnatural, it was outside of creation itself. And when the one above all turned his gaze upon what had been done, he did not speak in anger. He did not cast down judgment. He was afraid. For this was not rebellion. This was an intrusion into the divine. A thing had been made that should never have been, and now something had to be done. The erasure, a fate worse than hell. No voice spoke its name, no decree announced its fall. There was no great battle, no rebellion to be crushed, no sentence of exile to be carried out. There was only silence. Lucifer had been cast down, but even in his fall, he had been given a place. He was bound to the earth, allowed to walk among men, to whisper in the shadows, to rule over those who chose to follow him. His punishment was great, but his existence was never erased. His name remained, a warning, a curse, a symbol of defiance, but for this one, there would be no such fate. It was not sent to the depths of the abyss, nor allowed to walk upon the earth. It was not condemned to rule over the damned, nor bound in chains like those who had fallen before. It was given no dominion, no suffering, no torment, because it was given nothing. I will blot out their names from under heaven. Deuteronomy 9:14. It did not belong to the light, nor to the darkness. It did not belong to heaven, nor to hell. It did not belong anywhere at all. And so it was removed, not banished, not exiled, erased. No one would remember it. No voice would speak of it. Its name was not cursed, for even a curse acknowledges that something exists. It was stripped from the fabric of creation itself, cast into a place that was not a place, a void that was not emptiness, a silence deeper than oblivion. Even the fallen did not know of it. Even the abyss did not whisper its name. Depart from me, for I never knew you. Matthew 7:23. But if it had truly been erased, if every trace of it had been wiped from existence, then why? Why did faint echoes of it still linger? Why do the oldest texts contain warnings of something that should not be? Why does the fabric of creation bear the scars of something that was never supposed to have been? And if it had truly been removed, then what was it that still remained? The buried traces, echoes of the erased. It was meant to be forgotten. Every memory of its existence had been wiped away, its name erased from the records of time. No angel spoke of it, no demon whispered of it. It had been cast into oblivion so absolute that even the abyss held no knowledge of it. And yet, despite the decree of its erasure, something remained. Not a name, not a story, but traces, faint, scattered, almost imperceptible. A presence that should not exist, an absence that was too unnatural to be ignored. The one who entered the realm that none were permitted to touch. The warning appears in ancient writings, texts outside the accepted scriptures, words scrawled in forgotten languages and hidden in the margins of lost books. It is never named, never described, only feared. something not bound to light or shadow, not part of heaven or hell. A thing that was not supposed to be, and yet, somehow, it was. But in the ruins of forgotten civilizations, in the depths of temples long buried beneath time, there are symbols that do not belong. Markings that resemble no known language, etched into stone as if burned into existence itself. Scholars who have studied these markings refuse to speak of their findings. Some have gone mad trying to decipher them. Others simply disappeared. The ancient curse of a being that belongs to no realm. There are whispers of a book, a single manuscript, older than any known text. It is never found in the same place twice, appearing only in the hands of those who seek knowledge that should remain buried. It is called the Book of the Nameless One. Within its brittle pages are prophecies of an entity that was not cast out, but erased. One passage, found scribbled in a dead language on a monastery wall, reads, "Before there was rebellion, there was the architect. Before there was the fall, there was the first that was removed, not of light, not of darkness, but something in between, and in that place between, it waits." But among the lost texts, there is another whisper, not of the erased one, but of something or someone who still remembers. A presence that has existed outside the light and the abyss, unseen yet never absent. There was one who bore witness, one who had seen what should never have been seen, and for that they were cast out, not for sin, but for knowledge. They were not erased, for even erasure is an acknowledgement of existence. Instead, they were bound in silence, trapped in a realm where no voice may carry, no memory may linger. A guardian, or perhaps a prisoner, doomed to hold the last piece of a secret that should never have been. There was something before darkness, before Lucifer's shadow touched the world. If it was truly erased, then why did the fabric of reality still bear its scars? Why did the oldest texts, written in tongues long lost to men, still hold warnings about something that should not have left a trace? And if it was waiting, then what would happen when it returned? The return. What happens if it comes back? It was never meant to return. It was not imprisoned, not sealed away like the fallen. It was not bound in chains, waiting for the final judgment. It was erased. It was unmade. And yet, in the corners of forgotten knowledge, in the whispers of those who seek forbidden truths, there are rumors. Not of a being that has returned, but of pieces, fragments of something that was never supposed to exist. If it was erased from history, then who is trying to bring it back? There are those who search for what should not be found, scholars of the lost, keepers of forbidden texts, seekers of power who believe that the act of erasure was never complete. The echoes that remain, the gaps in reality that still bear its scars, they believe these are pieces waiting to be reassembled. And then something happened. Deep in the mountains, in a monastery untouched by time, an entire order of monks vanished. The stone walls of their sanctuary collapsed into ash, but there was no sign of fire, no embers, no heat. The air remained cold, the ground untouched. Only silence remained. At the center of the ruins, a message was found, carved into the last standing pillar. It is awakening. And what happens if it returns? Lucifer sought to rule. He desired power, worship, a throne of his own. He was cast down because he challenged the authority of heaven. But this being challenged something far greater. It did not seek to take the throne. It did not seek dominion. It did not seek to destroy. It sought to rewrite. Lucifer's fall was an act of rebellion. This would be an act of recreation. If it was ever restored, it would not wage war. It would not seek vengeance. It would unravel everything because it had never belonged to any realm, never existed within the structure of heaven, earth, or the abyss. It was an anomaly, an error, something that was wiped away because it was too dangerous to exist. But if it was once removed from history, who is to say it cannot be written back in? And if that day comes, then creation itself may not survive, may not. The final revelation, can it ever be stopped? It should have been impossible. The act of erasure had been absolute. No memory of it should have remained, no fragment of its existence should have survived. And yet, something was stirring, not a return, not yet, but a shift. It began as whispers, unexplained distortions in ancient texts, warnings that seemed to appear where none had been before. Scriptures written thousands of years ago suddenly held verses that scholars swore had never existed. Fragments of forgotten languages spoke of something waiting, something that had once been removed but was beginning to push against the veil of nothingness. And then there were those who searched for it, not out of fear, but out of desperation. If it was erased, can it be restored? There are those who believe creation itself is flawed, that suffering, mortality, the struggle of existence, none of this was supposed to be. That the moment this being was erased, something fundamental in the structure of reality broke. And so they search, not to unleash evil, but to restore what they believe was meant to be. Deep within the ruins of a forgotten civilization, a brotherhood has spent centuries piecing together the lost fragments. They call themselves the keepers of the unwritten. Their purpose? To undo what God himself erased. They believe the world was never meant to exist as it does, that when the erased one returns, reality will be rewritten into its true form. And now, for the first time in millennia, they have nearly completed their work. Can it be stopped? Once, it was erased completely. Once, its name was wiped from all things. But the fact that its echoes still exist, the fact that something remains, does this mean it was never truly gone? If it was unmade, yet something still lingers, then perhaps nothing can ever truly be erased. Perhaps it is not waiting to return. Perhaps it is already returning. Perhaps every crack in creation, every anomaly, every inexplicable shift in time and space is not merely coincidence, but a wound reopening. And then the scholars who had studied the Book of the Nameless One began to disappear. Their research, their notes, their very names vanished. The pages of their work were found burned, not by fire, but as if the ink itself had rejected what was written. No one could recall their faces. No records remained of their existence. And in the silence of an empty study, in a room that no longer remembered its owner, a single whisper echoed, "You cannot erase me twice." And if it takes its place once more, then creation as we know it will cease to exist forever.